Okay, these are some problems from section 4.5. We want to show one period of each of these functions with this given shift. And we can see over here, first of all, this is the first one, number 17. This is just a sine of pi minus x. So we just have a shift of pi to the right, because it's a regular just x minus. So it's in the form of a horizontal shift. I'm shifting pi to the right. Remember, the period of pi is, I'm sorry, the period of sine is 2 pi, so this is normal. If I started here, my period would be 2 pi. So I would go up 1, 0, down 1, 0. So we graph sine with those actually 5 points. But now we're going to shift it over. So now we're going to start here at pi. And that's going to be 0. And then I'll go up 1. Because this is pi over 2. I'm sorry, 3 pi over 2. Okay. 4 pi over 2, this would be 5 pi over 2. And 6 pi over 2, which is 3 pi. So now I've shifted over. So I'm going to go up 1, back to 0. Remember those 5 points we talked about. And then down 1. And back to 0. So there's your graph. And it's just shifted over. And again, if you connect it with a smooth curve, hopefully I can do this without messing up. I usually have to change my curve a little bit like this, or my paper, excuse me, so I can get it down. Then change its concavity so it starts to be concave up like this. Try to get it to be as curved as you could down here. And that's what you've got, something like that. Okay? Alrighty, so that's a sine and it's just shifted over. So once you have those 4 points, then you just connect them. And remember, they're the same basic points relative to the starting point, 3 zeros, a 1, and a negative 1 for the sine. Okay? Alright, let's take a look at number 21. Now this is a little more complicated. First of all, our amplitude is going to be 3, so I'm going to go up 3 over 3. I'm sorry, up 3, down 3. And then I've got to change here. My shift isn't really very apparent, and then I'm going to have to change in the period. So what we have to do is we have to, first of all, we have to have x. It's always going to be in the form x minus the shift, so I've got to get rid of this 2. So I kind of did the work down here to save a little bit of time. This was my function that I started with, and I knew I was going to have to factor out the 2, and it's kind of hard to factor out a 2 like this, so I rewrote this as 2 pi over 2. In other words, and if you just 2 over 2 is 1, so that's the same thing as pi. But if I do that, it's a little bit easier to factor out a 2 from both these terms. So I factored out the 2 from both those terms, and what was left was x, and if I take out the top 2, I got pi over 2. So now I have a shift, a right shift of pi over 2, an amplitude of 3, so I'm going to go plus or up 3, down 3, and my period is going to be affected by this. Now remember, period is 2 pi over b. In this case, the b is whatever's in front of the x term. Now the x term's got the shift, but we just think of the x term as this. All right? So this is going to be the b. So 2 pi over b, 2 pi over 2 is just pi. So now my period is pi. So I have to do the same 5 points, but only in a pi, in a range of pi, but I'm shifted. So it's a lot more complicated. So hopefully you can see what's going on here. So this is my shift. This means my period is just going to be pi. Now remember, the way of figuring that out is if you take the period, which is pi, and you divide it by 4, that gives you the length of each subinterval. So each subinterval will be pi over 4. Each subinterval will be 45 degrees or pi over 4. Just take the period and divide it by 4. Now my shift is over pi to the right, so I'm going to start here at pi. And then this is 3 pi over 4, 4 pi over 4, so this would be 3 pi over 4. Remember, pi over 2 is the same thing as 2 pi over 4. This is like 3 pi over 4. 4 pi over 4 is just pi. Then 5 pi over 4. And 6 pi over 4, or 3 pi over 2, the same thing. Now, those would be my 1, 2, 3, 4 subintervals, and it's shifted over to pi over 2. So it starts at pi over 2 because of the shift. It starts at pi over 2, and because of this period, it's only going to be pi long. So those would be my 4 subintervals. Now, so this will be my 0. And then I go up 1, but except instead of going 1, I'm going to go up 3 times 1 is 3, so I'm going to go up to 3. So I have to make sure I kind of eye this right. Then I go down to pi. And then here I go down to -3. And back up to 0. So these are your 3 zeros. 0, 0, 0. There's your 1, but in this case it's going to be by 3. And your -1, -3. All right? So those are your 5 points that you use to graph it. Kind of watch that you get a curve up here at the top. And it's going to go like this. Got a lot of nerve doing this with pen, don't I? It's kind of like I sketch it. Now, I'm afraid I might get a pointy part here, so I'm going to make sure that I make a little bowl here so that I curve around there. I don't know if that'll help. Hopefully it will. Comes right back around here, and up there, and there's 1 period, 1 cycle, 1 period. Okay, something like that. And remember, the key were those 5 points. Let's put them in green so you can see them. These are my 1, 2, 3 zeros, and your +1 and -1, but in this case it's going to be +3 and -3. So there's your sine curve there. Okay? Same 5 points. Just switched in a little bit. I hope that's okay. This is the other one up here. Put those in green so you can see those points a little bit better. Again, the same 5 points. Here the shift is just pi over 2. Okay? So that's my shift, pi over 2. So I started pi over 2. Okay? So if that's clear. So take a look at these, make sure you can figure them out. They're not too difficult, you just have to do them step by step to figure them out. Okay? So there's 17 and 21.